inviting me today. And I want to also thank the Conference of European Rabbis for the amazing work which they're doing continually on this issue, headed by Rabbi Goldschmidt over the past year, as this issue has continued to spread across Europe. I also want to thank the Morei de Asra and Morei Hamdina of the ORD and Rabbi Ehrenberg from Berlin, which we saw last night, of the growth and the development of this community, and that pays enormous credit to the work that you're doing here. We need to be talking here about what kind of political context we're dealing with. A couple of months ago, just over a month in fact, the Council of Europe, the representative body of 47 member states, the Parliamentary Assembly, passed a motion criticising Brit Milah as an affront against the rights of the child to the physical integrity of their bodies, and compared Brit Milah to female genital mutilation and to other affronts against the human body. That exemplifies that the whole issue of rights is changing across Europe. Whereas once the rights to freedom of conscience and to freedom of religion was a sacrosanct right above any other rights, that is clearly no longer the case. Today, children's rights, animal rights, consumer rights appear to have a greater sway than religious rights. And if we want to take a little example of that, we can even see in the ability of countries to ban the Muslim veil or the hijab as a way that countries assume today that the right to freedom of religion is no longer sacred. That is a new political context which did not exist in the past. Similarly, on a European level, we are approaching today European parliamentary elections in 2014, in May 2014, where in many member states of the European Union, it is extremely likely that parties of the far right will top the polls in European elections. They will top the polls because of an anti-European feeling, and they will top the polls also because of an extremely low turnout in European elections. Let us not be under any illusions whatsoever. Wherever there is an attack on religious rights, it is motivated in general by an attack on Muslim communities in Europe. And Jewish communities are collateral damage to those attacks. And whether those parties of the far right, whether the Front National in France, whether the Danish People's Party, whether the Swedish Democrats, whether even UKIP in Britain, the motivation to draw attention to the growth of Muslim communities and their specific religious practices will always hold sway, whatever their views are about Jews, however positive they might be, and however positive their relations towards the state of Israel. So in a context where the political turnout, and in many countries we're talking about under 20% of the population, will come out and vote, the fact of your communities coming out to vote in European elections in May 2014 is critical in the fight to preserve Shechita and Milah in Europe. And if we want to take an example out of that, we can look at the case of Holland, where the PVV of Wilders is likely to be the main party after the European, will probably send the largest block of MEPs from the Netherlands to the European Parliament. Wilders is known as a strong supporter of the Jewish community and an even stronger supporter of the State of Israel. But Wilders and Wilders' party were the main initiators, along with the Animal Rights Party in the Netherlands, against Shchita, and fought like mad to make sure that was passed, despite the pressure that was put on them by the State of Israel and by the Jewish community. We're facing also a constant political attack by forces who believe that these children's rights hold sway over religious rights. If we take the case of the Scandinavian countries and the collective position of the Children's Ombudsman in the 5 Nordic countries of Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Finland and Iceland, together with the paediatricians' organisations in those countries, wrote to every single paediatricians' organisation across the European continent and to every children's ombudsman, asking them to take a concerted political position against Brit Milah. That is also the political context which we are dealing with today, which returns us once again to the Council of Europe. The Council of Europe Parliamentary Assembly, and we should be very clear about this so that we don't have any misunderstandings about what is happening in Europe. The Council of Europe is not the European Union. It does not legislate. The Parliamentary Assembly is not a legislative body, it is a consultancy body. But the Council of Europe is extremely important in terms of jurisprudence, because the Council of Europe also hosts the European Court of Human Rights. And European jurisprudence is conditioned by a situation of majority courts in nation states working on national legislations as based from governments. So if challenges come on these issues of rights to the European Court of Human Rights, the opposite is occurring to what's happening in the European Union. In other words, initiation on a pan-European level from the European Union impacts on the nation states. But on the Council of Europe level, which is more states, 47 member states, national legislation in different member states, the prototypes that occur, maybe in Scandinavia, could have happened in Germany, could have happened in other places, could impact on your countries through the Council of Europe because of what happens on a national basis. I want to say here that we were in a sense very, very lucky in that we got a warning with what happened in Germany. And also what happened in Poland, what is continuing to occur in Poland while we wait for the results of the Constitutional Court over Shchita. We all know that it's pretty easy to defend Brit Milah and Shchita in Poland and Germany because of the historical nature of what occurred in those countries with the Jewish communities. We can use words like Holocaust and 1930s and Kristallnacht in places like Germany and Poland. But when it happens in Scandinavia or when it happens in the Netherlands, we cannot do that. I'm very pleased that we have Rabbi Hofmeister here. I'm delighted that the Conference of European Rabbis has taken the important initiative of creating the Union of Mohalim in your order. Because the message has to be that if we do not self-regulate in our communities, and we have no self-regulation of Mohalim, most communities, and I was in France a couple of weeks ago, do not know who their Mohalim are. Their Mohalim are not necessarily qualified. We don't know what the standards are. We don't know how many milahs are being done. If we do not self-regulate, governments will legislate against us and we will lose our rights to Brit Milah. one last word, I'm sorry, one very last word in conclusion. If there is one mitzvah which most Jews keep, it is Brit Milah. One of the fantastic things which we see across the Jewish communities is that no matter what the religious observance of the leadership of those communities, or the lack thereof, all Jews are fighting together for all this. The Conference of European Rabbis is the classic, and almost uniquely amongst rabbinical organisations the world over, to not be a purely sectarian organisation and to be a Klal Yisrael organisation. And for that reason, the European Jewish Congress is extremely grateful and wants to work and does work on a regular basis with the Conference of European Rabbis on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. Now, the next speaker will be Dr. Josef Schuster, Vice President of the Zentralrat, the Juden in Deutschland. Recommend no more than 6 minutes, please.
Okay. Rabbi, I think a lot of things I think and I wanted to say is already said by my neighbor. You have heard, of course, of the problems we had in Germany, and we started here with this decision of a court in Köln now 1.5 years ago, which could have made Brith Milahs in Germany not legal any longer. Give us the possibility to have Brith Milah legal in Germany still on, and it is necessary to tell all the Mohalim who are working, doing Brith Milah in Germany, what means this new law, which is, I think, not against halachic things. And I think it's really a great idea and a great work of Rabbi Hofmeister to make such a congregation of Mohalim through all Europe. Germany is part of Europe. And we both have to speak whether there are also special points which necessary in Germany will do in their information, or we have to do it by ourselves. That's what we did in our certification up to now. Is nothing about how to do the Brith Milah. Is nothing what is halachic. Only to tell the Mohalim what is to do by the law we have now in Germany. Thank you.
Much for your presentation. Now, the next speaker is Rabbi Shlomo Hofmeister, Community Rabbi of Vienna and President of Union of Mohalim of Europe, and will give us information about this new organization, which is very important and a key to what Philip said before about the way of self-regulation.
Not as a direct reaction on the political background, the social developments which Philip described already in his introduction, but rather on an idea, on an initiative going back to 2007, we founded this year that might say maybe the situation in Germany was a catalyst which enabled us to really found the UME, the Union of Mohalim in Europe. The Union of Mohalim in Europe is based on the role model of the British Initiation Society, which successfully maintains and sets the standards for Brith Milah in the UK for over 250 years. In a pan-European society, the need for regulations and standards which cross the borders has become evident, and last year's discussion in Germany is only one of these examples, because it didn't take very long, not more than 5 hours, for the same headlines to appear in all German-speaking countries, from Switzerland, Austria, and even in Belgian newspapers. What's the purpose of the UME? The purpose of the UME is manifold. On the one hand, we are there to set and to maintain standards for Brith Milah in Europe. We are there to supervise the activities of Mohalim in Europe, of our members. Our plan is to facilitate, and we have a website which we'll launch within the next couple of days, to facilitate the placement of Mohalim, and that not only regionally, meaning in certain areas, for example, in Germany, where there is so far yet one single Mohalim who qualifies for the standards of the UME, to facilitate the placement of Mohalim. In Germany, the vast majority of Brith Milah is performed by Mohalim traveling from other countries. And that's why also one of our responsibilities is to inform them about the legal situation in the countries they travel to. They might not be aware of it. But also to give them the required logistic support to be able to perform Brith Milah in other countries as well as in their own, without problems, without legal problems, and to minimize the complications. We are aware that any kind of complication, any problem resulting from Brith Milah is jeopardizing Brith Milah altogether. These might be complications which are normal. We all know after bleeding is one of those. That's not the fault of the Mohalim. However, whenever this occurs, it can be a great problem for us. We advise our Mohalim, for example, to get in touch with medical doctors in their own cities, in their own communities, to have them as an emergency, if a complication does occur, to have someone to turn to, someone who knows how a bris looks like. Because one of the biggest problems we face at times is that when a baby appears in hospital with an after bleeding, and the medical doctor who is not used to look at a bris, he will think there was a mistake, there was cut too much. We have terrible stories of doctors commenting, terrorizing the parents, pressurizing them to stay in the hospital. I have one case where the parents were advised by the doctor to do a reconstructional operation to transfer skin from scrotum to, because otherwise the child would suffer lifelong. It's a terrible, terrible situation that the doctors don't know how this looks like. So that's why it's very important that our Mohalim are in contact with medical doctors locally, who they can work together with in case such complications occur. Dr. Schuster mentioned already before the certification in Germany. That's basically what I meant with informing, advising the Mohalim about the legal ramifications in the countries they travel to. When we talk about the standards, we have a statute which is part of the constitution. We are recognized officially as a body corporate of public law. So we are an independent organization affiliated with the CER, and we follow the standards and guidelines of the Standing Committee of the CER, obviously. But we are an independent body uniting the Mohalim, not only the individuals in several countries. We have so far Mohalim in 7 different European countries as our members, but also in the committee of boards to combine the national boards, with representatives of the national boards of Mohalim, from the Initiation Society to the Swiss Mohalim, the Austrian Mohalim, the French Mohalim, are just about to set up a national committee for Mohalim in order to coordinate not only the logistics but also the political strategies for the Mohalim in order to prevent any possible problems. There are many more things to say, but I think I leave it for now. I'm past the 6 minutes.
But I think it would be also necessary to have information for all the Mohalim which do not live in Europe and come to Europe and make here bris.
We are not the ones to say that only Mohalim are members with the UME should perform Brith Milah in Europe. But at the same time, the European Jewish Congress issued a statement 2 weeks ago in which a recommendation in that direction was given out. We have the problem not only with Mohalim, we have the same problem with the Shortim, who travel from outside the European Union, from outside of Europe, from XXVIII, but also from other countries to Europe to perform Brith Milah in the Avdil element of Schritte here, and do not comply with the local standards. That's a general problem which should be approached by the European Jewish Congress.
Last speaker before we get to the audience is Rabbi Elimelech Vanzetta, Executive Secretary of the CER.
Thank you, Mr. President. Distinguished speakers, Rabbonim Dayanim. We say, Kol Israel Arevim Ze Lezeh, every Jew is intrinsically responsible for his fellow Jew, and we're now seeing this materializing in what is happening in relation to Shechita, Brit Milah, and other Jewish practices around the continent. We shouldn't think we are alone in Europe. A Jew in Northern Europe shouldn't think that his decision will not have an impact on Jewish life anywhere else within the European Union. Every decision, every single decision taken in one place of Europe could probably and will set a precedent on a pan-European level to decisions which will be taken not by local governments, by the European Union in Brussels, and could have a direct impact on Jewish life across the continent. So what last year was a decision in one single country, in Germany, if I may go back to that specific decision in Cologne, it was the decision of a district judge in one city that had no legal binding, it wasn't legally binding anywhere else in the country, but everyone was afraid of performing Brit Milah, and it spread rapidly to other parts of the German-speaking countries. In Switzerland, they recommended, even in the Jewish hospital, that they should not perform Britot. In Austria, they were afraid of the consequences. So we see that one decision involving one Brit Milah, and it wasn't even a Brit Milah because it had to do with a Muslim boy, ended up affecting and jeopardizing the continuity of Jewish life in Europe. And now we have the recommendation of the Council of Europe, as Philip Carmel rightfully said, comparing female genital mutilation to Brit Milah. And we do see a coalition for different reasons, but arriving at the same conclusion between the far right and the far left. The far right for what we could call anti-Semitic sentiments or anti-immigrant sentiments, and the far left on behalf of human rights. Human rights is now a sort of an umbrella that can cover absolutely anything. Anything you say, if it comes under the guise of human rights, will find a friendly ear somewhere in the audience. So it is very, very funny and very odd and very unfortunate that at the same time as we heard the outcome of a decision taken by the Parliamentary Association of the Council of Europe, at the very same time as they were making a recommendation against circumcision, equating that to female genital mutilation, as I said before, and as was said before, at the very same time we heard from Brussels, what is normally referred to as the capital of Europe. They were deliberating on the possibility of extending the right to euthanasia to minors. As long as they had the consent of their parents, a minor in Belgium could decide, taken as a lone soldier, not in consultation with a body such as the Conference of European Rabbis, in no likelihood that decision will set a precedent in Brussels and will grant other countries the right to implement the very same law. So, Kol Israel Arevim Ze Lezeh, we are now, that's a reality we should live, and that's a reality which is now being imposed upon us by external powers. So we should really think carefully, we should think twice and maybe thrice, and consult with the Conference of European Rabbis as a pan-European rabbinical representative body, with the Union of European Mohalim as a collegiate body of Mohalim, to see exactly when we are, and if we are, exposed to external pressures, we should consult and see what is the next step, what is the right step to take, what is the right direction to go, because your decision will have an impact on the continuity of Jewish life across the continent.
Thank you, Rabbi Vanzetta. Before giving the right or asking question, I want to add that in Israel, the state of Israel is very concerned about the development of this crisis about Shkita in Europe, and the Parliament of Israel was very active, and there is a big attention in the state of Israel about our problems in Europe. Now, are there any questions? Please.
I'm Rabbi from Denmark. Microphone. Okay? Doesn't matter. I'll speak like this. I just want to tell you what's the situation in Denmark for two reasons. First of all, there's been already regular for the last 100 years that there always has to be a doctor next to the Mohalim, which I think is a very, very good idea, and which had given us also some good explanations to the Minister of Health. This is one thing. The second thing is that we make a register exactly as every doctor has to do with what his patient, when he's dealing with. We are doing that, the doctor and the Mohalim. And I think that these 2 points might be important to the future of the Mohalim.
Let us gather some more questions. Okay. This one. This one. No. There are people.
Shalom, Yeshua Katowice. Thank you very much, Rabbi Elimelech, for your words, but it seems
louder.
It seems that the problem is not our inability to regulate and to make poor decisions, but rather the greatest problem is from the Muslims. What are we doing to work with the Muslim community and able to ensure that they self-regulate and that they keep this from being a problem for themselves and for us?
Okay. Thank you.
My good friend, Chief Rabbi Alexa, I think I would like to comment immediately on that. I'd be very, very concerned whether to be a proposition, a proposal to have a doctor present, because straight away you are limiting Brit Milah, which means we would fight against an instruction or proposal of government to have a doctor present, because first of all you're saying that you, government, have got a right to interfere in our Brit Milah, it should be this way or that way. Second of all, what are you going to do in places where a doctor cannot always be present? There's villages, there's little places, not every situation, but Shabbos, there's a whole host of issues. You will become hostage to fortune if you allow any legislation that they tell you it should be done this way, should be done this way, you can only do it with supervision, you can only do it at this age. It's a slippery slope. If you've had it in place and it's worked for you, so you're saying a mitzvah, that's a fact. We certainly would not encourage that, we would not propose that. Rather, we would fight that such a thing should not be allowed.
I'd like to mention, I've seen quite a number of different Mohalim work, and I've also been present with doctors trying to apply their craft in this area, and I've seen highly qualified Mohalim. And I've seen doctors highly qualified in their own fields who don't have a clue of how to perform a Brit Milah, and I'm now, this second, particularly thinking of a circumcision of an older child with an anesthesiologist who was clearly out of his league when it came to Brit Milah. Obviously, given the circumstances, our cases were having a medical professional present might be a mightily good idea, and in others where it might be a mightily bad idea. But I think it's first of all quite important that we bring out, we make sure that this becomes known in the public that the qualified Mohalim are generally highly qualified people. I'm saying the qualified Mohalim. I know there are also unqualified Mohalim. And that being that they specialize in one and only one procedure, that therefore they have expertise that surpasses what many doctors have in this area. This is one thing. The other thing is I'd like to know, from the qualified Mohalim I've seen them being well trained in hygiene, being well trained in anatomy, in a couple of other areas that are crucial in order to safely perform a wonderful Brit Milah. And I just want to know whether the feeling is that the UME at this point can already fulfill all the expectations of the different European countries regarding its members, or not yet.
Before giving the possibility answers to Philip and Rabbi Hofmeister, there is another point about the presence of a doctor. Who is the regular responsibility? Who is going to be insured about this? This is also a very delicate problem, because if they have different ways of understanding the problem, who's the responsibility? It's going to complicate. Yes, you have 1 minute for each one. Okay, go ahead.
So I'm a doctor myself. You may think that I say hallelujah. I don't say hallelujah, because when I see the situation in Germany, when we had the discussion 1 year ago, it was the president of the Congregation of Pediatrics who made us a lot of problems. And if we had the regulation that there would be necessary to have a pediatric or a doctor besides the Mohalim, I think it would be for these people just the point to make it possible not to make Brit Milah, because we would have great problems to get a pediatric because of this situation. And to say my opinion is my favorite is an excellent Mohalim who is also a doctor, not an excellent doctor who is also a Mohalim.
I want to ask Rabbi Shlomo, talking about your organization, you should give us exact information. You have to give the rules of your organization, how to get them, how to spread them.
I try to do all of that, which is answer all of the questions raised. I need 2 minutes. First of all, regarding doctors, I can sign anything that Angeli just mentioned. The doctors are a problem, and I just want to raise the following interesting point. There's hardly a week that I'm not being approached by parents from any European country who send me photos of the bris of their child. Newborns, 5-year-old, 10-year-old, and sometimes even older people who send me pictures to ask, is there a problem? And in many, many cases, I would say most cases, where we have a problematic bris, it has been done by a doctor. Not by Moel, by a medical doctor, even urologists who do not know how to do a bris. There is a technical difference, and not every circumcision is a kosher bris. In order to qualify for a membership in the UME, a person has to fulfill the halachic requirements in order to be able to be a Moel, as well as the halachic and the practical expertise to perform a bris milah. If either one of them is missing, a person cannot become a member of the UME. Any person who wants to be a member has to carry an official certification in his training, and the training in any serious training of Mohalim in the world includes the relevant medical training in hygiene, in wound care. That's all taken for granted. The regulations required by the German government, for example, are no problem for the regulations, for the standards which we have in the UME. We fully fulfill those requirements. There is no problem. Regarding medical doctors, Dr. Schuster mentioned that obviously also for cosmetic reasons or political reasons it might be very nice to have medical doctors being qualified Mohalim. decided that these doctors fulfill in their personal life the halachic requirements to be a moel. We have in Germany, and it's very relevant for Dr. Schuster, now 4 young medical doctors who do fulfill this requirement, who are interested to become trained as moelim. These 4 doctors, 4 young medical doctors from Germany, we are pursuing the option to train them in Israel, to give them the practical, the shimush in Israel, because it's very difficult to do that in Europe in a short time. In general, we don't support those crash courses which are offered by some Mohalim oil, where someone follows a moel for a couple of weeks and a month later he's a moel mumche, because that just doesn't work. Proper training takes much longer, because unless a moel has been exposed to difficult cases, to complicated cases, as seriously, he was padias, just to mention one possibility, he cannot be called a mumche, and it would be irresponsible to place such a moel anywhere in a place where he doesn't have any mumchim around to assist him in case there's a risk which is more complicated to deal with. These 4 doctors we want to train. The UME will take care of the theoretical training of the teaching. The practical, the shimush, has to be done in CER, as mentioned, and we are already talking to the Zentralrat about.
We have to realize that Brit Milah is a Jewish practice. People who are experts in Jewish practice are rabbis and experts in halakha, and in the case of Brit Milah, Mohalim. People who decide what Brit Milah is and how it is defined are those people who are experts in halakha. That said, there's a principle within this organization, I think, and a principle within the rabbinical world, that the Moed Asra in a particular place understands the particular concerns and the particular political context of his communities. The situation in Scandinavia, in Denmark, in Sweden, and in other places, is that the political context is not conducive to tremendous public support for Jewish practice, neither for Shechita, neither for Milah. If the situation is that Ba'al Korcham, hey, they need to allow the situation of a doctor being present, then I think we should respect that. But that should not necessarily be a precedent for places where that is not the case, such as Britain, and should certainly not be used as a prototype for standardization on the European level. On the issue of Israel, which is a very important issue indeed, we have to realize that unfortunately Israel is not necessarily the flavor of the month in Europe today. Israeli politicians and chief rabbis interfering in the political process in the defense of religious rights with European politicians who do not understand the political context and say dangerous things which occurred in this city as well. And I don't mean representatives of the Conference of European Rabbis who acted extremely responsibly in this issue. That is extremely dangerous indeed, and we have been in contact with the Speaker of the Knesset to try to make sure that loose cannon Chavrei Knesset do not run round the European Union or national parliaments talking about issues which they do not understand and do not comprehend. That's that issue. The issue of Muslims. Okay, we have to understand that at bottom line, Brit Milah is an existential issue for European Jews, but it is not necessarily an existential issue for European Muslims. Why? Because most European Muslims have Brit Milah done in hospitals under national health services and therefore done by doctors free of charge. Secondly, so the medical issue is less of an important issue for them. Secondly, Muslims have their circumcisions generally done at a later date, so that the issue of consent is also less of an issue. Thirdly, many Muslims take their kids to foreign countries, Muslim countries, to have the circumcisions done. If there are links and useful links which should be made over issues such as shchita with Muslims, Brit Milah may not necessarily be one of those cases. And finally, about the letter which was sent out by the European Jewish Congress, because I really want to clarify this. European Jewish Congress took a unique step. It wrote to the umbrella secular organizations of Jewish communities in 42 European countries where there are Jewish communities, from Ireland to Russia. And it said, you must make sure that all the Mohalim in your country are qualified and accepted by the Union of Mohalim in Europe. And that was a unique step, because not all our members are Orthodox, not all our members are Shomrei Shabbos, some of our members might not even be halachically Jewish. But we said that a Moel can do something in Leningrad or something in Dublin, and it's going to impact on every single city in Europe. And you have to make sure that it's right. And therefore, bringing people from outside the country who are not supervised, who often leave after 24 hours when the kid starts to bleed and then they're taken to hospitals, that should be a practice that is stopped. Mohalim should stay in the country for at least 36 hours, and they should ideally not be brought from foreign countries unless they are members of the Union of Mohalim in Europe.
Bill, we have to stop. Okay, you want to say just 2 words? Okay.
First of all, I want to say that Rabbi Merlis's keynote address is just starting 5 minutes at 10:15, and addressing and complimenting Philip's very, very complete words, and addressing what Rabbi said and elucidating on the resolution of the Council of Europe. The Council of Europe's recommendation was that no Brit Milah no circumcision could take place before the child himself could consent to the circumcision, which means we would be affected, but not the Muslim community. And as far as traveling abroad, you can't take an 8-day-old baby to a place where where circumcision could be performed. But if you are 13, 14, or 15-year-old Muslim boy, you can go back to a Muslim country, even if ritual circumcision, Chas v'Sholom, were to be outlawed in Europe. That wouldn't affect the Muslim community. So the cooperation possibility is very, very limited. And I thank you, Mr. Chairman, for this wonderful session. And please let everyone know that we should start on time.
Just last word. We started talking about Zentralrat. I would like to say that we need to be organized, well informed, but we have to ask, but tell me, Menu, kol Zentralrat kashot v'raot, cancel from us every bad and hard decision against us.